Okay guys, this is my 8th, 9th, 10th attempt to make this video, and I'm bound and determined I'm gonna make it. We're gonna come up with 10 soap recipes today that I'm going to show you how to use a soap calculator on so you can formulate your own recipes in the future, but I will go over 10 recipes today. We're gonna go to the soap calculator. And this is very self-explanatory. We're going to go under sodium hydroxide, and it tells you this is for making solid soap bars. Potassium hydroxide is for making liquid soap. We're going to go in percentages because usually when you get a recipe online, it'll show in percentages how much of each oil to use in your batch. But if you're breaking it down, you're like, I don't know what percentage of oil I need. So we're going to go into ounces. Now, if you're familiar with working grams, kilograms, or pounds, you can do that, but we're going to go into ounces, and I'm going to go with 32 ounces, which is the size of a regular 2-pound mold that you can get off of Amazon. I think they have them at Hobby Lobby now. We're going to go with 0% of super fatting. We're just going to keep this very basic just so you can get an understanding of the soap calculator. Waters to oils in your recipe. It has recommended values. We're going to go with 33. Now here is where you pick your oils out that you're going to use. You can just scroll through. It has all sorts of interesting things. It even has like beef tallow, goat tallow, sheep tallow. I'm going to show you a very popular recipe that a lot of soap makers will share, and it is probably the recipe that they use quite a bit. We're going to have olive oil. We're going to do that at 40%. Now notice it tells you you still need 60% to add up to your 100. The next one they put in is coconut oil, and they do this at 30%. Then they put in palm oil, and they do that at 20%. So as you can see, we need another 10%. They use sweet almond oil at 5%, and castor oil. Come on, it's right in front of me. There we go. Castor oil at 5%. Now you've got exactly 100%. So now we can calculate and see how many ounces you need for your batch, for a 2-pound batch. This is where you can add other ingredients. I don't add this here. I am more concerned with the recipe, so I don't add that. We're going to calculate and look immediately. It tells you exactly how many ounces of each of those oils you need, and your water and lye, how much you need. Then you go down and it gives you property ranges. Hardness, that is 41. That's going to be a good hard bar of soap. The higher this number is, the longer the soap is going to last because the harder the bar is going to be. The cleansing is 20, conditioning, lather, creamy, iodine, and INS. And this gives you the ranges. If you play around with this soap calculator and you get anywhere in these ranges, you're going to have a really decent bar of soap. The iodine and INS, I am not experienced enough or never was interested enough to discover why that is important in my soap making. So I just kind of ignore these. Some of the recipes will kind of get above these levels in that, and I've made these soaps and it doesn't affect the recipe. So like I said, I'm not experienced enough or concerned enough with these to worry about it much. Now here you can name it your first recipe. You can come down and make notes, or you can just simply print the page off. See, it says print your recipe, and it prints it off. And then you can make notes, like what colors you added, or what fragrance you added, what date it was made, You can put it your favorite recipe, or the fragrance oil that you used didn't work well in the recipe. So here's your first recipe. And like I said, this is a very popular recipe that a lot of soap makers will share, but they always give it in percentages. And this is an easy way to figure out how many ounces you actually need. Now, if you need to copy this recipe down, you can just push pause and copy any of these recipes down. Now we're going to start over. We're going to go to our next batch of soap. We're going to go back to the recipe, and we are going to start all over. This time we're going to only have olive oil and coconut oil. We're going to do 50% of each one of those. I'm doing this so I can show you how simple it is to have a decent bar of soap. Okay, that's going to be very hard. This bar of soap is going to last a long time. It's going to be very cleansing. Conditioning, not so much, because it's really cleansing a whole bunch. Lather is good. And the INS is over, but I don't worry about these numbers. Now, even though these don't fall in the ranges, this is a very simple soap. In fact, we're going to name it Simple Soap. And you can pause this to copy this recipe down. Then we're going to go back and start over a little bit. Back to the recipe. We're still going to keep these two ingredients, but let's change this to 60% and this to 40%. And see what that does. Still very hard, very cleansing. The conditioning is better. The lather is great. Still a good bar of soap. Let's go back. Let's change these numbers a little bit more. Let's do this at 70% and this at 30% and calculate. Still hard. Cleansing is okay. Conditioning is much better. Doesn't look like the lather's very good. I usually like for my lather to be above 23 on this value. It seems to work better, and it's what I personally like better. This doesn't mean that this wouldn't be an excellent bar of soap. With all of these recipes, it's just going to take practice to see what types of soap you personally like better. Just lots and lots of practice, guys. Okay. Let's go back to the recipe, and we're going to start all over again. I guess I shouldn't have erased those, but we are going to use olive oil again. We're going to use coconut oil again, and let's see, castor oil is a good one. And so far, all of these ingredients you can get at the grocery store. Let's do 40, take that back, 45 and 10. Let's calculate that. Very cleansing. Conditioning is okay. It's got a very good lather. Castor oil seems to help with the lathering component also. Another good bar of soap. Let's name this another recipe. Let's go back. We're going to remove the castor oil. We're going to go ahead and leave the olive oil and the coconut oil because most all recipes do best if you start out with these base oils. I hope you're kind of starting to understand how to use the soap calculator now, and you can look around your home and see what ingredients do I have at home that I could use in soap. Let's do one with corn oil added to this. Corn oil gets overlooked quite a bit, but it is very moisturizing. And I started using corn oil in recipes when palm oil was hard to get a couple of years ago. Let's do this at, let's say 40, 40, and 20. I'm keeping the numbers as simple as possible. It's hard, it's very cleansing, it's got a good lather, so that is a good bar of soap. But let's go back and work this a little bit better. Let's keep this same recipe and add castor oil to it. We're going to keep the numbers very simple. And this is an exact recipe that I like to use quite a bit. We're going to calculate hardness. I wouldn't want it any lower than 33 because it's only going to last a couple of weeks if you do that. The cleansing is okay. Conditioning is really good. The lather is good. Let's go back to our recipe again. Let's say we don't have corn oil. Say you've got vegetable oil. If you read on the ingredients on the back of it, it will say it is soybean oil. You can add that. And let's add castor oil again, because this is just a really good recipe. Calculate that. The values and properties are pretty much the same as with the corn oil recipe. Let's do it again. Back to recipe. Let's remove that. Let's do some avocado oil. Anything with avocado oil is going to be very moisturizing also. Let's add castor oil. This may be too moisturizing, but we're going to see. The hardness is better. This is an excellent bar of soap. I may have to try this. I like it. Okay. Let's go back. Let's say you want to get really fancy and add a lot of different oils or butters to your recipe. There is, where did I see that? Lard is pig tallow. Lard you can find in the grocery store. You usually find this down the baking aisle, and this is what people use to make homemade tortillas. My grandson has skin problems, and if I make soap with lard for him, it's very soothing on his skin. I am not making any claims it's going to cure anything, but this would be something good to try. Let's add this. We're going to remove that. Let's do lard at 30%. Oh yes, this is going to be a very hard bar. It's going to last a long time. The lather is great. The cleansing is great. The conditioning is great. Let's name this lard. Lards. Let's go back to the recipes. I'm sorry I got sidetracked. I was going to show y'all something with a little bit fancier stuff. Let's remove these. We're going to do olive oil and coconut oil. And let's say, where's some shea butter? I'm getting sidetracked again. I'm sorry. Shea butter. Add this oil. And castor oil. Add this oil. So let's do this at, shea butter gets expensive, so we're going to only put like 20% of that in. So now we got to come up with it. The rest, castor oil, we don't want more than 10%. Usually 5% is standard for castor oil. I just personally like castor oil. So let's make this 35 and 35 so we can get to 100. Calculate. Oh, very cleansing and a very hard bar. This will last a long time. Lather is great. Let's name this shea butter recipe. And again, if I'm going too fast, you can always pause it and write these down. Okay, now we're going to get fancy. I guess we could have left the shea butter. Let's make this really fancy with cocoa butter. We're going to add that oil. Shea butter. Where did I go? Shea butter. Why would it not do it? Okay. Let's do avocado oil. Let's do castor oil. I think y'all are kind of starting to get the idea that you can just put anything in here and see how it works. It even has rabbit fat. I've never even heard of that. Safflower oil. Add that oil. Okay. Let's have at least 30% of coconut oil. Let's do 10% that way. Let's do 10% of that, 10% of that, 10% of that, 10% of that, 10% of that. And I still need another 10%, so let's do 20% of that. I am just making stuff up. Let's calculate and see what it does. Look at that. It's a good bar of soap. That is excellent. So this is if you want to get fancy smancy. Let's name that fancy recipe. Now you can go with fancy smancy recipes. You can put all these oils in there if you have them and you like them. But sometimes it's like, I'm going to say, chocolate chip cookie recipes. You can have a fancy recipe and it tastes wonderful, but sometimes what you crave and what you really like and really want is just the plain chocolate chip recipe on the back of the package of the chocolate chips. In other words, sometimes the simplest recipes can be the best recipes. I think we're going to leave it at that. I hope this helped. And if you do have any questions, leave them in the comments below and I will do my best to get to those and answer those. Thanks for joining me in the Madhouse, and we'll catch you next time. Bye.